Good afternoon. Well, now for something a little bit different. I was asked to present about dynamic publishing solutions. That's another way of looking at XML. Once you've got content in a malleable form, there's a lot of different things you can do, and there are also, as was just mentioned, a lot of different entry points for where you might introduce XML into a publishing or a ebook production system. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background, starting with what are the needs and requirements of new media. This content that you own as publishers is not just going to be used in a reading format or a static format. It may be used in lots of different pieces, lots of different ways, and lots of different new products that don't even exist yet. I'm going to take you through some demonstrations of things that we've done at Adobe that are actually still in our labs that are coming out that involve XML at many different stages in the production. A little bit of overview of XML in the Creative Suite. How many of you have used the Creative Suite in your work, or Acrobat even for that matter? There's XML involved in all of those applications, although sometimes it's hidden. It's working behind the scenes because XML is an excellent programmer tool as well as a way of developing content. And then finally, we're going to look at some eBooks and talk about the content server, which is the DRM component of the digital editions reader, plus the software development kit that was mentioned this morning by the gentleman from Lexical. And then finally show you some more advanced forms of what a publication of the future could look like if it were completely dynamic and web-based, as opposed to Word, something that you held in your hand. So this is, of course, a time for change for all sorts of publishers, not just book publishers. People are competing for attention. The 500 channels of television, the millions of websites and search engines available, the rapidly proliferating devices, hardware devices that are coming out, like netbooks and handheld reading devices, and finally, the evolution of the industry, the change of the business model. We as software developers look at this and sort of chunk it out into pieces and sort of say, what parts of the problem can we solve so that people can get more directly to the content and not have to become computer programmers to take advantage of each of these different applications. So we see sort of this world flattening, and as we look at people coming out of schools today, they're equally comfortable reading on the screen, coordinating a video with an audio track, or laying out a magazine or a book with the tools that are provided to them in school and education. So we have to develop tools for more people to do that. And I call this personally the dynamic media evolution and where it came from. I come from a print background, newspapers, books, magazines, and that sort of thing. Those are what you call linear media. You read them from front to back, and sometimes you scroll up and down a little and take a look at them. Time-based media, on the other hand, are like radio and televisions. Those are generally things that are broadcast to a large number of people all at the same time, and they follow them over the course of the time. And there's a storytelling method that's involved that's different from linear printed media. What we see now is hypertext media. Hypertext media means you can jump in and out at places to get more information. You're not just stuck on one site, you're linking from one place to another. And that includes things like web browsing or even eBooks that have hypertext links built into them. It gets really interesting when you start to include interactive media, things like video games that connect out to the internet and let you link to other people or share content, or what we call rich internet applications, which are websites that allow you to do complex business transactions at the same time as you're getting information about something. And then there are hybrids, and the hybrids are the most interesting because that's where, as we see it, that's where the duck is going. Our founder used to tell us that you always aim where the duck is going, not where the duck is. If you aim where the duck is, you're always going to miss. You want to look at what's the most radical way that I could use my content or display my content. What's the most platform agnostic way to use content, and then take advantage of that. So today I would like to focus specifically on EPUBs and PDFs. These are the typical forms for digital reading. The difference in a nutshell between PDF and EPUB is PDF is fixed format. That's the layout of the page, the design of the page. And EPUBs are reflowable format. That means they can get larger or smaller or wider or narrower within the constraints of a physical device. Both very useful for different things and very interesting. Now, we publish a lot of different types of software. We publish software for doing video, we publish software for doing print, we publish software for doing interactive work and HTML creation. So we have to look at these all and sort of say, what's the best way we could use technology to make it easier for people to create content across all the formats? At a lot of levels of that in our plans, XML is involved. And I'll explain sort of how that'll work. All these different workflows have different tools and different file formats and different computer operating systems. And the answer is, as we've heard a lot, is that by using XML at specific places, you can tie together diverse file formats and diverse content types into a continuum that can be organized by a content management system or a database. By using XML to describe metadata, content, and form, then you can have an organized system eventually from what right now is today is probably a type of chaos. So within the Creative Suite Toolkit, that's the groups of applications that we put together, we look at it in terms of this trifecta of create, manage, and deliver. Creation tools are what authors and designers use to put together the content. Manage is how you connect these things together. We have a technology called XMP that I'm going to go into. XMP is XML for metadata that allows you to index and to register rights and history, attach it to an object, and move that anywhere, even to the point of delivery. And finally, the delivery platforms. Now, we always considered Acrobat a platform, someplace that we could send files to and anyone could read them. Now there are other platforms like Flash and like the new eBook readers that are hardware specific that we're also going to try to support in as many ways as possible through applications. So we try to go across this continuum. Now, XML, as was just explained very well, is a part of a solution. But we always think of it as, what are you going to use XML for? Because there are lots of different uses for XML. There's an XML for the websites, for instance, called XHTML. It's just HTML with a well-constructed set of tags around it. There's XML for vector graphics. That's part of the EPUB format. Part of the EPUB format allows you to put SVG, scalable vector graphics, inside of an ebook. There's XML for eBooks itself, of course. And for PDF, there's even an XML called Mars that I'd like to talk to you about. This is like the beginning of our sort of evolution of how are we going to migrate all of our file formats to XML, if that could be useful. XML for metadata is pretty nice. There's a standard called RDF, Resource Definition Framework, that was established by the World Wide Web Coordinating Committee for what's called for indexing metadata on the World Wide Web. We adapted that standard. That's what's great about XML. You can borrow and build standards upon other standards, and we call that XMP, Extensible Metadata Platform, that we incorporate in all the Creative Suite applications. Now, that can even include things like time-based media, videos where a track will run along in the background and allow people to link to things from inside the video, or to play back information to someone who's displaying the video about who's watching what part of the movie. Now, we make that available as open source material so that people can create XMP without having to pay a fee. Integrating open source into standards is a very important part because that lets more producers cooperate and play together. Quick demonstration of the bridge. The bridge is a piece that comes with the Creative Suite. It lets you look at different file types, regardless of whether they're static or dynamic, and then look at the metadata that's associated with them. The beautiful part about this is extensible. So I'm going to jump out of the presentation for half a second here and open up the bridge and show you what I mean by that. One of the greatest problems with applying metadata to objects is that so you want everyone to use the same keywords. For instance, when they're indexing something, you don't want someone to say this is a highway and this is a road. You want them all to say things from what they call controlled vocabularies or uniform vocabularies. Those can be put into web service databases that people can draw from. So we have the bridge here, and these are some photographs I got from a newspaper. On the right-hand side, you see a panel that actually shows the metadata for each of these things, the description, the photographer's name, rights information, information about the camera, the exposure. When you want to go, though, and apply some more metadata, say, from the web about this, we make it possible to extend the bridge so that you can create a link out to a web service. And that's what I'm going to show right now. So to see the metadata panel in the Adobe applications, whoops, I selected everything. I'm going to call it up through a keyboard shortcut. This is the metadata that you see inside of an XMP file. An XMP file is just a piece of XML text that attaches to all of the files, so it travels with them. It's not separate from the file. Well, we've created one here that actually goes out and does a Yahoo Spring Graph search to apply metadata to a keyword. So say I was looking at a can of, I think I was looking at a can of Healthy Choice soup. I want to say, what are the appropriate keywords. It's going to go out to Yahoo, the web willing. If not too many people are searching on things or playing videos right now. My connection back and search one, sorry. Well, what it would be showing you if the web were there, and we'll see if we can get it back in a second, is it would go out over the web, do a search, allow you to see the keywords associated with my search term, click on them, and put them into the keywords field down here on the bottom of the screen. So the idea is that you could use metadata, combine it with the web service, and bring it in through the application. So a lot of content management system developers are building interfaces based on this capability of the bridge to allow you to track and tag content more accurately. Now, Mars is interesting. PDF was a tagging language that we invented back in 1992 or so, just before I joined Adobe. PDF has a way of tagging all the content, but it's a fixed format. It tells you where all the words are on the page. However, it would be useful if people could use XML to look at a PDF file and find out information about it. Like look at all the images, see what fonts are embedded, see where words are located on a page for a search. So we created a little extension to Acrobat and to Acrobat Adobe Reader called Mars that you can download from this link below, and we'll put these up on the BookNet site. The Mars plugin lets you export PDF in an XML format. Now, it doesn't look like a whole structured XML document. It looks just like the old PDF, but all of the tags are visible, and they're stored in a package format. If you know about XML, there's another level above XML called packaging. Packaging is a zip file, a compressed file, that has a directory saying what's inside the zip file, and then all the pages and spreads and fonts and resources needed to make the file are broken down in this package. So PDF exported as PDFXML can now be viewed through anything like Oxygen or XML Spy that can delve into an XML package. That's kind of interesting. That means people can do lots of different things with the file they couldn't do before. Now, we also created a little utility here called the PDFXML Inspector. It looks like this, and you can download this from labs@adobe.com, and it actually allows you to open any XML package, and I created one here right here for this presentation. And once you save this file, it'll have the extension PDFXML. And what it shows you is all the pages in the document. If there's scalable vector graphics on the document, it looks like that. If there's an image on the graphics, it's stored as a PNG file, and the actual text for the page and the contents of the page are stored like that. So this is something that we explored at Adobe. We said, wouldn't that be useful to do for all of our formats so that, say you were looking at a photo that was laid out in an InDesign page, you wanted to edit in Photoshop, wouldn't it be nice to just edit it without having to export the photo, edit it, and return it? So we're exploring this technology and taking it a little bit further than what it was originally intended for, and we're going to start to create uniform file formats that exchange content. Now, InDesign itself is a new application. This was created around 1995 when we brought Aldus PageMaker into the Adobe family. If any of you ever worked with Aldus, we also had bought Frame technologies at the same time. Frame is a very strict XML, SGML editor. However, not very adaptable for doing design or layout of certain types of products. It was mainly designed for cooperating between engineers at scientific organizations, and it ran on Unix. Most of those functions have kind of gone away. We keep bringing Frame forward in the future, but we add these features now to InDesign. Every version acquires new Frame type features. So we've been putting in XML features inside of InDesign. InDesign also comes in a couple of flavors. InCopy is a text editing version of InDesign that allows you to edit the text but not the layout. So in a way, that's a separation of content from form that we enforce through the use of XML. InDesign Server is a server-based version of InDesign with all of these same features, except it's used for variable data printing operations and for things like print-on-demand applications. There's a service called Albelly Book Services, for instance, that uses InDesign Server. There's lots of them that are actually using InDesign Server in the background to compose pages from database content. The main features of XML and InDesign and the other family members are to be able to bring tag content into a layout, to be able to see the structure while it's inside the layout in an InDesign document, and then be able to get the XML out of the document at the end of the process to put it in a database. There's a relatively simple user interface in both InDesign and InCopy that lets you import tags and then apply tags to content and actually see the location of the tags in the document. There's also a way to map style sheets, say that you brought in from Microsoft Word, into XML tags, as well as to map style sheets out XML when you get them out. So there's a way to bring in XML, have it reflected in styles in the document, and then do the opposite on the way out of the document. In the CS4 version, we added a feature for scripting the XML as it went in and out of a document. One of those applications we use ourselves to create eBooks, EPUBs, from InDesign, and I'll show you that in a second. So we're actually taking advantage of features we put in for other people to be able to support things like EPUBs on the way out. There are also third-party products, a couple called EasyPress from Atomic and PCI Pages Scriba that actually do a artificial intelligence scan of a document and will tag things to conform to a strict DTD without the user actually having to tag content inside the InDesign document, which can get very complex on things other than straight textbooks and simple formats for books. Now, in terms of eBooks, the file formats and the readers are evolving very rapidly. I remember my first cell phone didn't do very much and the battery didn't last very long. The combination of screen display, which was also very small, battery life, portability, and cost are what determine or gauge how fast these ebook readers are going to evolve. What you're seeing now is these large format, like the Plastic Logic 1 or 4 bit per pixel grayscale non-backlit readers coming out. What these will evolve into probably is things like netbooks. It's happening very quickly though, and it's happening now. On the cell phone side, we've got things like Google Android and the iPhone that have sort of reached a peak. We're just beginning to see the promise of the ebook readers. Now, we created an application for desktop PCs called the Digital Editions Viewer. That Digital Editions Viewer displays the PDF and the EPUB format, EPUB being the reflowable version. Notice it's also based on XML, XHTML inside, with a user interface designed for digital reading, and it's downloadable as a standalone or something you just download and install right away. And it's designed to have markup features and also to allow things like borrowing ebooks from libraries. This is a very important application since it addresses all the people who are on desktop PCs. InDesign, at the same time, we created features to export to that digital editions format, and we put in long document support features that translate into hypertext links within that format. Things like cross-references, conditional text, and tables of contents. Now, it can also export to the PDF format, along with a table of contents and other things. And finally, we've added the ability to go out to Swift, to Flash format, and to an editable Flash format that can be used inside of customized readers that we think are going to become more and more common. Content Server is a service that resides at adobe.com that allows book publishers to lock the content, to apply DRM, and that DRM is then bound to the content so that a user can license a book and use it with the rights of fair usage. For instance, the ability to loan a book out to someone is provided by some users. You can prohibit users from printing more than a certain amount of a book or from printing at all. And it's designed as with a pay-as-you-go pricing model, so it only costs a few cents per copy that's assigned. So Content Server combined with the Digital Editions Reader and the SDK that's used in products like the Sony eBook Reader and others will allow rights-protected content to be shipped in the PDF or EPUB format to as many different viewers as possible. Now, so we're sort of like taking this approach that rather than put all the content management in the viewer, Let's do it in software, and then they get that software on as many viewing platforms as possible, either handheld devices or on desktop computers. And that should broaden the market and make it more acceptable. Some of the companies that have already announced plans to ship devices in 2009 include Booking, Irex, Lexical, Plastic Logic, Polymer Version, Spring Divine, and of course Sony. And today we actually shipped the digital reader SDK to them, as well as over 40 OEMs and manufacturers of eBook products. So we expect this technology, DRM or unprotected, PDF or EPUB, to spread very quickly and to be used as a type of de facto standard in the industry. So, quick demonstration. I'm just going to jump out to InDesign, export a book to EPUB format, export it to PDF eBook format, and then pick it up in digital editions in Stanza. So this is InDesign, and I got my own rights managed book that my wife wrote that I translated into InDesign. InDesign has a feature called Books, where you can put separate documents into chapters, declare one of them the master document, and the style sheets from that document and colors and swatches will apply to all the documents. So it's best to create books using that Books feature. When you want to create an ebook, all you do is say export the book to digital editions. It'll ask you some questions. Let me see if I can zoom in on that a little. Yeah. Where to put the ebook format, etc. Save it, and it'll say, tell me something about the book. Use the metadata from InDesign, add some publisher's entries. Use cascading style sheets. That's very important. Cascading style sheets allow the EPUB readers to translate the font sizes and font choices directly into an experience that the user can enjoy. It also embeds the fonts inside the document if the fonts are embeddable, and that means you can use real fonts in an ebook instead of just generic fonts as you might find found on the device itself. It also has some provisions for images, formatting them, resolution, and for ebook content. The EPUB format supports both XHTML and the DT book format. And then, of course, include the table of contents and style entries. So I'm going to say export just to show you how quickly it takes place. And InDesign actually opens all 4 documents, concatenates the contents, links the table of contents together, and exports the ebook. Now, on the iPhone, or the Stanza reader, it actually is kind of nice. It looks like that. It's got the cover of the book first, and the Stanza user interface allows you to click here, pick on a table of contents button, see the table of contents that InDesign created, and I'm going to go right to the plates section because it's kind of a nice experience. It loads up the data, and then it will play the illustrated color photos in the book. And then you click on the right-hand side of the page to navigate through the page, and they're all in full color. So all the contents in the book, all the footnotes that were in the book, and all the links that were in the book are preserved in the EPUB format during that export. If I go back out here to the digital editions reader, this is the digital editions reader. Again, table of contents is preserved. The book is reformatted. Now, notice the spacing and the type sizes aren't exactly probably what you want. That's where you use cascading style sheets. So it does take a little bit of skill once you export an EPUB format to tinker with it, but you can use cascading style sheets and then see the results right away up on the screen as part of that XML package that you can edit, ebook format. Now, what next? Well, InDesign had a format where you were using XML internally inside of InDesign to go backward. So whenever we came out with a new version, we sort of said, how can we save backward to a previous version? That happens to be a perfect application of XML technology because you can read an XML file and discard what you don't understand or know and save the rest. So we created a little filter for InDesign that would save the entire document, string it out, almost like a macro had created the document from scratch using our scripting language, but in XML format. So whenever a version of InDesign came out, we would save backward in a format we called INX. That was all it was good for, though. The problem was that it was only designed for InDesign. It wasn't described for anyone else to read. There was no way to put on what we call a schema or a DTD to an INX file because it was a serialization. It was just sort of do the whole document backwards and let somebody else read it back in. So we said, well, what if we evolved this? It's so hard to see in the red lettering there, but what if we evolved this into a format that other people could read and write? First of all, we could use that format, and secondly, third parties could use it. We did not support reading and writing the INX format, even though it was XML. So you can have XML that's so personal, it's useless. We did that. It's useful only to us. Our partners hated that. We have hundreds and hundreds of partners who use InDesign in integrated systems or in content management systems. So IDML, which we introduced in CS4, allowed them to modify pieces of the document using programs like XML Spy, like Oxygen, and like that tool I just showed you to actually see parts of a document, list all the style sheets, list all the fonts involved, and change the document if you needed to, or to extract the content. So it involved full separation of form from content. Think of it this way. In PDF, a PDF file knows exactly where every word fits on every page, but it doesn't know the relationship of two words, one to the other. They might be near each other or far apart. That's all PDF can tell you. IDML lets the text flow along and then applies style afterwards to the text. So it's a full separation of form and content. This could be very useful. For us, it can be very useful because we can now say, look at this InDesign document. Could we use it somewhere else inside an Adobe application, like Flash, like After Effects? Okay? So we were thinking about these things and then created some new formats. So around IDML in this version, we created something called XFL. That's a version of Flash. You're familiar with Adobe Flash, the authoring tool for Flash files, that lets you go and export directly a full-page document to Flash. We also created the INCL format that allows you to save to InCopy, back and forth. So those are the two ways we use XML and the InDesign markup language document to communicate form separate from content. Now, I'm not going to show you a demonstration of that today, but this is what an IDML document looks like inside of the Oxygen XML editor. So, a couple of quick demonstrations. I'm going to show you how we use this first. I'm going to go back to InDesign and export this document right here to Flash. Now, we actually use the IDML document language, the XML file, as an intermediate language. I'm going to ask it to bring it up on the screen to me after reviewer. So it's going to take this book, and I'm going to include the spreads and create an interactive book out of this chapter in one step. There it is up on the screen. And what I've got here is a book that has page turns built into it, like that, or that can be navigated through the keyboard from page to page. Okay, kind of interesting. It's a way of making a dummy book very quickly with very little effort. To go a step further, though, some of our developers are doing things like this. They are taking the route of exporting directly from InDesign into Flash and then editing the Flash to make a very rich media experience. Here's one called Flip, F-L-Y-P. Flip Media, one word is the name of the site. And they've created, and oh boy, if we don't get a good internet connection, I'm not going to be able to show you very much. I think the internet access is on the other side of the partition today. I was afraid of this. Take a look at this site. What's going to happen is this expands up to full screen, and they've, starting from an InDesign document for the design, which everyone knows how to do, went into a rich Flash experience that includes video and other interactive features, and they publish a weekly magazine based on this, and then build in advertising around it. Very, very interesting use of InDesign's XML. And then finally, do one more quick demonstration. Hopefully it doesn't require the web. So that was Flip Media. And the last one I can't demonstrate because it also requires the web. We've been doing some work with newspapers. Newspapers are in a lot of trouble right now as far as rich experiences. I find reading newspapers on a website not the right experience at all. We've created something in cooperation with the New York Times and the Herald Tribune called the International Herald Tribune Reader. You're going to be hearing more about this in the next few months. It populates a newspaper-like reading experience with reflowable text using real fonts that works as a vertical, horizontal, or any format you understand. So regardless of the resolution of the monitor, it can be resized and reflowed in columns so that it duplicates a newspaper reading experience. This is what I'd call a custom application for viewing and reading content. This is what's going to become more and more prevalent as time goes on. It's using a technology called Adobe Air that actually builds this reader right here. And Air can be created from Adobe Flash, but in the background, it's reading XML through what's called an RSS feed. So it's actually taking a format called the News Industry Text Format, formatting on the fly using the fonts that were desired by the content owner and make it into a newspaper reading experience. There's a link on the bottom there. If you go to tv.adobe, well, go to the booknet website after this is all over and get this PDF, because you'll never be able to copy that URL. And there's a full demonstration explaining the technology behind this. So there are a bunch of things there. I tried to get into 40 minutes. Some new media potentials, ways that we use XML today, and a few ways that we think XML is going to be useful tomorrow in making very rich dynamic media as addition to paged or reflowable media as you have with PDF and EPUB today. Thanks very much.